Very good morning to you. Welcome to another edition, of course, the midweek edition of Rise and Shine Daily on Spectrum Television Live. My name is Janice Kobum, and we're super delighted to know that you are at the other side, of course, of this divide. Welcome once again to Rise and Shine. Let's rise and shine together.
Good morning, Africa. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Akwa Ibom State. God has given us yet another opportunity to be all that we want to be on this side of eternity. My name is Uyai Anekan, and I am grateful to be here this morning. I do hope that you are pushing the conversation, making more people to hear about Spectrum Television. How would you do that? Like, share, comment across all our social media platforms. If you get a great conversation coming out of Spectrum Television, share it. Let more people hear that Spectrum is doing a great job in the media space. Of course, all of that you can find at spectrumtv.ng, and also we're really encouraging you to be a part of the buzz on Twitter at spectrumt online. Good morning, and thanks for joining us once again.
Yes, another great conversation. Oh, yeah, I know that you're a little bit under the weather, but how are you feeling generally?
I'm just thankful. just thankful, really.
Okay, so so many things happening. Of course, yesterday we brought the news of change of service chiefs in the country. A lot of people have also made conversations like, okay, so it's okay for President Tinubu, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to actually do these changes now, because I think one thing I registered yesterday is the fact that you'd like to work with people that you're comfortable with working, so it doesn't come as a surprise at all. I remember it was a Daily Sun now that actually tagged it this Hurricane Tinubu.
Yeah.
Hurricane Tinubu is in town, scattering and trying to sweeping everywhere and all of that. But again, we do not expect anything less. These changes do not come as a surprise at all. It is something that is very synonymous with any new administration that comes on board. We get to see new changes, we get to see new faces, we get to see new policies also. But again, in all of this, remember that in terms of governance now, in terms of governance, it is continuum. So let us not be seeing that drastic shift, from the policies of the just concluded administration to this, with this particular administration as well. Politics is continuum, or governance is continuum. So let us see how we can also build on the precepts. Now, we are not also saying let's build on everything that the past administration did. Let us sift it, look at it holistically. Which one is good enough for us to continue with? Which one is not good enough for us to continue with? And then we just know, and then try to strike a balance, so that we are not, leaving behind a lot of white elephant projects, or projects that we think that, okay, at some point it would have been good for the policy or for the country, the totality of the country, and then these projects are not also forthcoming and all of that. So, but it's okay. It's fantastic, to see that a lot of reshuffling, a lot of changes. What that will also do is to bring in new energy, new vibe, new capacity, new ideas on board, and all of that. But we have seen that happen. Of course, all service chiefs have been compulsorily, retired, and then new ones brought on board again. Yes, that name is quite a tongue twister. Yes, was decorated by the Vice President Kashim Shettima.
Well, a lot of things are happening, and Nigerians are grappling to explain the situation. First of all, it looks like, okay, the president is doing a clean sweep, but then more Nigerians have become bothered with how much of a sweep they have, experienced so far in just about 3 weeks. The president seems to be changing.
And how much more is going to come?
Yes, and how much more is going to come? Now, the big question is, there may not be a lot of problems with the changes, but what results can we expect out of all of these changes? Those are some of the questions Nigerians are asking. Fielding questions here and there, even looking at social media. People are like, we really don't know what to expect again. Then again, there is the concern of, is the president trying to literally put everything under his control more like, you know, when we look at the profile of some of these persons that he's appointed, these are persons he's worked with before. To what extent do we measure their loyalty? Is it just that when the president coughs, they say, how much more do you want to cough? You know, and such things like that. So there's a lot of concerns. And then when we backtrack to the retiring of service chiefs and all that, one clause that we saw in all of this information is that civil society organizations had continued to say that the security architecture of Nigeria needed to be overhauled and rejigged entirely. So that is one explanation that the presidency is leaning on as the backing for the clean sweep that we have seen with the security architecture. But of course, Nigerians are hoping that this is for good. But
again, aside from even the civil society coming to say that, look, we need a total overhaul, we need to rejig the system, the truth of the matter is that no administration comes on board and retains. They don't retain. You have to change it. It has to be an overhaul, or pays a loyalty, you know, to a certain person. The loyalty has to be to him. He's the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic, GCFR. He's the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and so he's the Chief Security Officer of the country, and he needs to work with people that he's comfortable working with, people that he knows that, okay, if I tell you go to Sambisa and flush out bandits there, they will do that. But you know the problem now. It's one thing to appoint these people as security chiefs. Yes, fantastic, a rejig, an overhaul. But let us create that enabling environment for them to do their job. I was talking to somebody yesterday and that issue was raised. Where is the enabling environment? So you could also have situations where you are leading a battalion, and then inside the battalion, for example, you have 100 people under that battalion, right? And then just 2 people are loyal to you as the commander of that battalion. The other people are saboteurs. So what result exactly will you be getting from that kind of leadership?
And that explains also, that also backs up the clean sweep in the, you know, the first cadre of people that are working with him in terms of security. But well, on the heels of that, we've seen that the Vice President Kashim Shettima has announced, now 24 hours after the Egbeto Okun was announced as the new Acting Inspector General of Police, he has been decorated by Vice President Kashim Shettima at the State House with his new rank. The ceremony, which took place in the afternoon, had in attendance the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, the Chairman of the Progressives Governors Forum Hopu Zodima, the President's Chief of Staff Femi Gbajabiamila, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation George Akume, and the immediate past IGP Usman Alkali. Now, the new police chief, who spoke to journalists shortly afterward, said he feels like a tiger ready to devour Nigeria's internal enemies as he prepares to assume office. Of course, 11 a.m. this morning, Wednesday. Now, in a drastic change of guard on Monday night, President Bola Tinubu approved the immediate retirement of the Chief of Defense Staff, all the nation's service chiefs, the Inspector General of Police, IGP Usman Alkali, as well as the Comptroller General of the Nigeria Customs Service, Colonel Amid Ali. Now, Tinubu consequently appointed Malam Nuhu Ribadu as National Secretary, Security Advisor, I beg your pardon, and Major General C.J. Musa. Now, we still have the listings that we had brought yesterday. By the president, and just so that, you know, they are given a good footing also to be able to carry out their duties. Like in the case of Egbeto Okun, now we have seen him being decorated, you know, with a new rank. We'll give voice to this and we'll get right back into the conversation.
Now, I have just been decorated and I'm looking forward to taking over tomorrow morning by 11 a.m. I really can't describe how I feel presently, but if I have to tell you anything, I will tell you that right now, I feel like a tiger inside of me, ready to chase away all the criminals in Nigeria. And some other time, I feel like a lion in me, ready to defeat. Now, I have just been decorated and I'm
yeah, of course. we clearly see him say that he feels like a tiger that is ready to, you know,
Devour
devour the
criminals.
internal enemies of the country.
It's good. I like the fact that, yes, that's the new energy we're talking about here, but it's one thing to say these things, it's yet another thing for us to see it happen, right? So he's not just going to be dealing with criminals and internal enemies of the country. He still has, you know, a whole force to rejig. He still has the police, you know, personnel.
Something that was a big deal for Usman Alkali.
For Usman Alkali. We saw Usman Alkali Baba come on board and try to cleanse the police force, you know, the system and all of that. And I'm sure it's going to also be a big thing for Igbitokun, yes, at this moment. So it's not just about, look, we want to cleanse, or you feel like the lion inside of you is coming out to roar at, you know, the criminals and internal enemies. There's just a whole lot on the table of Igbitokun at this moment. But then again, we listened to Alkali Baba, the immediate past IGP, you know, say a lot of good things about this particular new acting Inspector General of Police, and we'll just take a listen and then come back right into the conversation.
Stage, you come, you walk, and you go. I'm happy I'm handing over to somebody I know that will carry the mantle of leadership from where I have stopped. We grew up in the job, we grew up together. I was his boss at a time, not even when I was IG. He worked under me twice. We've been working together, and I know how he can go ahead to champion the cause of the police from where I have stopped.
Now I have just been decorated, and I'm looking forward to taking over tomorrow morning by 11 a.m. I really can't describe.
11 a.m. this morning, new authority, new guard. Of course, we begin to expect that, just like the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is, you know, giving perspective and instruction, that Igbitokun is going to, you know, bring that kind of energy. So from 11 a.m. this morning, fingers crossed, expectations high. What are the new moves that we are going to begin to see? Yes, within the Nigeria Police Force, and how are, you know, the force members under him going to be embracing this new leadership? Because that also is very, very important. We are talking about rejigging the entire security architecture in the country to make sure that we have optimum results. It's not just changing the hands on the saddle, but what new, like you said, new energy and innovations do these people bring to the table with tackling of, you know, insecurity. We are talking about technological advancement. We are talking about, you know, new things with regards to artillery and ammunition for, you know, security. These things are, you know, the new task that Igbitokun is going to be.
We're even talking about, we're still talking about welfare of the Nigerian police.
Exactly.
Because that's one thing that would be, you know, they will tell you that, oh, the Nigerian police is not well treated, and that's why you see a lot of money collecting by the roadside with motorists and all of that. So, but again, a human rights activist now, Shehu Sani, has also identified two major achievements of the immediate past Inspector General of Police. That's talking about IGP Usman Alkali Baba. And for him, he says this two major achievements is that for the first time, right, that the police was not, you know, accused of involvement in election rigging. Now that's according to Shehu Musa. He says, for the first time in the history of the country, the police were not accused of involvement in election rigging. Now that is his own perspective about Alkali Baba. And then Sani also lauded the former IGP for his commitment to the payment of compensation to the families of the police who died in active service, actually. And he made a tweet that reads partly, "Personally, I appreciate these two achievements of the former IG of police Alkali, the professionality, civility and impartiality of the police during the 2023 general elections." Now, yeah, this particular comment will be looked at from different angles. Now, will a lot of Nigerians say that the police was not involved in election rigging in the last general elections that happened February and March? We saw a lot of videos that showed there was some kind of connivances between the military or the police force and, you know, people, terms of ballot snatching and all of that. So for some Nigerians, I don't think that they will be sharing the same sentiment that Shehu Sani is actually sharing concerning, you know, Usman Alkali Baba. We're not also saying that he's not done great. He did great, because we saw a lot of punitive measures being served, you know, to erring police officials, which show that he was ready. Police is your friend. We know that, yes, police is our friend and all of that. So there were those things, you know, punitive measures served, people losing jobs because of one erring thing that they did or the other. But when we say that the police was actually not, you know, part and parcel of whatever happened during the elections, I don't think a lot of Nigerians will agree to that.
Well, comparative analysis, maybe Shehu Sani is weighing this year's circle of election and past years, how much more, you know, the police had been wrongly involved in the execution of elections, because in some parts you see to a very great extent that the Nigeria police force was, you know, cooperative with the successes recorded in some areas. So maybe he's looking at a percentage decline in the negative involvement of the Nigeria police force. But then Usman Alkali is someone that will be remembered in the Nigeria police force
For a lot of things.
Yes, for a lot of newness that he brought to the table. And when you're speaking of professionality, I even took my mind away from the elections. There was a lot of professionality even within the Nigeria police force, how things were done. So it also shows that Alkali had some certain level of exposure that affected how he carried out his job as, you know, the IGP. But now we are seeing Igbechokun take on that saddle. Now, whether, you know, Nigerians will weigh Alkali as super successful, Alkali's shoes is actually a big shoe for Igbechokun to build upon, because he registered some successes. And also, one of the conversations we've continued to have is the psychological analysis of the men of the force. And we do hope that this is something Igbechokun can take up. Of course, this morning he's saying that he is looking forward to taking on his responsibility at 11 a.m. this morning. And of course, he has continued to reiterate that he is going to be ready to chase away all the criminals in Nigeria. And all national enemies. We're also going to be looking inward into the Nigeria police force. We also saw Alkali Baba, of course. Yeah, that was something. That was a twist. Now seeing Baba inside a mufti at the event is kind of surreal. Now he's getting to rest, and I think he's part of those that have been forcefully retired.
Of course,
so
yes.
he's just, you know, great move. Expectations are high at this time. Let's see how much this will affect the security architecture of the country.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we wish Igbechokun all the best as he takes up on his very new role as the IGP, acting IGP, until they are being confirmed constitutionally by the Senate. But let's look at our very next major story for the morning. Of course, we know that yesterday President Bola Ahmed Tinubu left the shores of the country to attend a financial global summit in France. And now, of course, the president, alongside other world leaders, will be attending the event, which is slated from June 22 to 23. President Bola arrived in Paris yesterday and was received at the airport by Ambassador Kayode Laro and other top government officials from the Nigerian Embassy and French Ministry of Foreign Affairs after the plane touched down at 6:47 p.m. local time. Now, the Nigerian president left Abuja through the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport earlier yesterday for the event slated for June 22 and 23. And now, during his time in Paris, the president will also join world leaders to review and sign a new global financial pact that places vulnerable countries on a priority list for support and investment following the devastating impact of climate change, the energy crisis, and the COVID-19 pandemic. According to statements by the Special Advisor, Special Duties, Communication and Strategy, Dele Alake, Tinubu will also explore opportunities to restore fiscal space to countries dealing with difficult short-term financial challenges, especially or specifically the most indebted. Of course, he was also accompanied by members of the Presidential Policy Advisory Council alongside with other government officials, and is expected to return back to the country on Saturday. Great moves, I must say. This is actually instigated by the French President Emmanuel Macron, I think, with about 2 other countries as well, Belarus and India, on that move. Now, financial summit, right? Okay, now all of this put together, looking at different challenges that more like third world countries are going through. I know that COP27 was also one major summit that talked about climate change and energy crisis in developing countries as well. So we are also looking forward to how we can harness this opportunity to better off developing countries. And then in countries' indebtedness as well is another major issue, financial crisis for countries. But as much as we are going to be signing this pact, with other countries, let us see how we as developing countries can also harness what we have to also give us that financial independence, so that we do not also be depending on these other nations to be able to do like debt cancellations, or we go borrowing too much, to the point that we are so indebted to other countries.
I think something that really stands out at this time is the fact that Nigeria is also positioning herself with other developed nations of the world to push the conversation of moving from the fuels that we use now to fossil fuels. And everyone is trying to build a green infrastructure for their continent and for their country, and it's important that a nation as highly placed as Nigeria in Africa is part of the top people in that conversation. And we're going to be seeing how the president's trip at this time to Paris is going to affect all of that. Now, part of the conversations really affecting Africa is our high debt burden across several African countries. The likes of Ghana are just having the conversations to clear their financial negotiations with IMF, and they're even saying we are trying to borrow, then we'll look for a way to begin to pay this money. So this conversation that the president is attending at this time is going to look at indices that affect the borrowings and the repayment processes for African countries. Can we look for other ways to collaborate, put our hands to move Africa forward, instead of just always being there to lend her money every time she creatively with other African countries? Now the conversation has even shifted to, for example, a country like Nigeria that is a mono-economic country. We are so dependent on oil. Now if the oil fails us, how do we begin to generate revenue, or how do we even begin to generate funds that will help us to even pay the debts that we are accruing for ourselves as a country? So while we are attending some of these financial summits, let us also try to see how we can begin to diversify. Now these are the conversations. Diversify your economy, grow your economy, make it in such a way that you go beyond borrowing, just like you have said, cap in hand begging for monies, and then at the end of the day, because let's not forget sometimes we apart from even pay, that if we borrow the money and put it into the things we promise that we're going to put, it's expected that those monies generate return on investment. But oftentimes those monies get lost in the pipeline. But then I think a priority conversation right now is recovery of economies since COVID-19. And
I like the fact that economies are still talking about impact of COVID-19.
Oh, because the impact is very intense. I mean, China just opened up its borders and allowed its citizens to go back to work and all of that. In like 3 years back to back, the economy has been dragging, and economies don't just change overnight. It's investments, pull-ins and pull-outs and all of that. So there's still a lot more country that's affected by
suffering from
the impact of COVID-19. And we're even looking at financial palliatives that were provided by the international communities during this effect. And more African countries are still calling on the international communities, come help us, because we're still under the burden of COVID-19. So this particular summit now, which sees even economists from these countries, for instance economists from Nigeria, with the president on that particular trip to have this conversation, so that when we come back to the country we might have had an holistic look and view as to how we're going to move forward. This is the president's first official trip.
Yes.
And there's a lot of expectation around it, like we say, a whole lot of expectation around it, more like first trip and counting. How is this going to affect his administration as the president? Don't even forget that a few weeks before he was inaugurated as president, he had traveled, I think it was to London now, saying he was going to have some business conversations
with investors.
So, yes, so we see him as a business minded president, and these kind of summits just gives more credence to that.
Yeah, definitely. Just like you have said, we are expecting that the outcome of this particular summit, of course, he'll be expected back to the country on Saturday. So we're expecting that more than just going for this particular summit or these kinds of summits, we'll begin to see how the impact, will affect the economy of the country. But more than ever, Nigerians are wishing and praying that we reduce our debt burden by diversifying the economy of the country and looking at other avenues, other sectors that we can actually be creating these revenues from. And even when we go borrowing, we should actually invest these monies in sectors that can give us return and investment. We'll just take a leave at this moment and join Mary Joseph, who's going to be bringing us the news brief. And when we come back, of course, we'll be sharing with you this morning some of the very juicy stories on our national dailies, and of course at the health burden of sickle cell and how you can actually manage that. These and more will be coming your way shortly after the news break. Do stay with us.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but There's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on StarTimes to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories.
Governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Hebrew.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but we can't be talking about cases which are in court, my lord.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
That Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
Voting for Spectrum TV to recover 40 lapses still counting. To recover 40 lapses still counting.
From the presidential villa to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, where he was received by state governors, government officials and military personnel. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu has approved the return of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, to the Office of the Vice President for supervision in compliance with the various Establishment Acts. The President also approved the return of the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria, NADCON, to the Office of the Vice President. Olushola Abiola, Director Information, Office of the Vice President, disclosed this in a statement in Abuja. In the meantime, newly appointed Inspector General of Police IGP Kayode Egbetokun says he feels like a tiger ready to chase away all the criminals in Nigeria. He stated this during a chat with State House correspondents after his decoration with the rank of IGP. The IGP Egbetokun expressed his feelings about his new responsibility, stating that he is looking forward to taking over today by 11 a.m. We head straight now to the foreign scene, where U.S. President Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, is expected to plead guilty to two misdemeanor tax crimes and admit to illegal possessing a gun while a drug user after a 5-year investigation. The U.S. attorney in Delaware has filed papers indicting a plea agreement has been reached. The terms of conditions and agreements are likely to keep him out of jail. Meanwhile, top Republicans have called it evidence of a two-tiered system of justice. And finally, in sports, Andy Murray says there is no need to overreact after his return to Queens fell flat when a 10-match 6-3, 6-1 and his hopes of earning a seeding for Wimbledon are all but over. We'll have details of this and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's go back to Rise and Shine, where we have Janice and Uyai on standby. Do have a wonderful morning.
Government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigeria for Spectrum TV to recover 40 lives in State County.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTime's DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Every Every society is premised on the quality of relationships forged by its inhabitants. The health of these relationships determines how well people, relationships, organizations thrive and how long they stick together. Join Uyai Anyekan on Connect every Wednesday from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday 2:30 to 3 p.m. on channel 421 on Star Times to catch all the conversations, interviews, real stories and how to navigate relationships and family life in the 21st century. Real people, real faces, real stories. Connect live on Spectrum Television.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the murder of Hebrew?
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
One truth not often told is about the transformation that Africa has undergone in recent decades. Africa is shaping its own destiny and should be referred to as the African opportunity. On Spotlight Africa, we paint the African picture the African way, laced with truth, detail, and the color of the African continent. Join Uyai Anyekan every Tuesday and Thursdays at 4:30 p.m. Spotlight Africa, telling the African story.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. Of course, Mary Joseph just brought us tidbits of global news, and also we've had several conversations already. Seeing the fact that the Vice President Kashim Shettima has decorated the new acting IGP of police, Egbetokun. Of course, he has also promised to face out criminals as he feels as a tiger.
Sometimes as a tiger, other times as a lion. Yeah, definitely, to be able to chase out and fight internal enemies of the country. We wish him all the best. Information there by the House National Assembly. We also, yes,
also is out of the country on his first official trip in Paris, of course, for the Global Financial Pact Summit. Now, these are some of the conversations we've had so far on Rise and Shine. You need to be following us across social media platforms. YouTube is one way you can have this show right now on the go as you get about now dailies.
Okay, on Nigerians of what's happening in the country. Let's start this morning with the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune, the big story here says Atiku, G5 governors absent as PDP moves reconciliation. And the writer says party stakeholders meet, review 2023 election. You can get that story on page 4. Moving forward, after 10-hour grilling, EFCC grants autumn bail. Okay, page 2 is where you get that challenges detention by DSS, 500 million naira damages. That's an interesting story. You just have to read about. Ondo, police arrest nurse, 2 others over baby's missing placenta. It's quite a scary one there. Subsidy 2 years after, NNPCL's auto gas program drags. And then we have a story here that says PEPC Atiku. Okay, that's the presidential election petition tribunal now. Atiku, PDP laments difficulty in getting documents from INEC. And then we have that the writer here says close case against Tinubu's election tomorrow. Okay. Those are all the stories that we have on the front page now of the Nigerian Tribune.
Moving on from Nigerian Tribune, we'll do the Punch newspaper this morning. The very big story there on the Punch says new service chiefs, 100 military generals may be retired. Now this is still more to come. We now see retirements gale to hit Army, Air Force, Navy, cause 37 others may be affected. Shetima decorates acting IG Igbetokun as Bababak's successor to succeed. Federal government votes 24 billion naira for 10th National Assembly members' accommodation. We healthy in Nigeria, our country. Naira closes at 756 naira per dollar as trading rises at official window. State's external debt rises to 3 trillion naira, page 17. We also see here Mephiles detention backed by court order, says TSS. Flood sacks residents from Ogun communities. Page 4 and 5 is where you can sign are not there. What exactly are you doing? That's all that we have on the front page of the Punch.
Okay, our next paper this morning will be the This Day newspaper. And on this day, we have that the big story here says Naira achieves convergence as official. Parallel rates close at 756. That's the big story on This Day newspaper. Naira achieves convergence as official. Parallel rates close at 756 naira. And then looking at the rider, it says CBN holds quotation of offer rates from naira settled. Okay, OTC FX futures contracts eyes for the reforms. A lot of riders under the particular story there. Let's move forward though. 6,221 Nigerian doctors lost to the UK in 6 years. International College of Surgeon reveals. The writer says over 40 million Nigerians find it difficult to see doctors. Of course, serious issues there for the medical sector in the country. PDP review committee says Atiku won presidential pool, waiting on tribunal. Of course, they are going to close that on the case of PDP by tomorrow. So we get to find out what the court is saying towards that angle. Federal government exempts NDLEA NAFDAC board from dissolution. Would we say that they have actually been able to skip the tsunami or the hurricane by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Definitely not. Of course, that's angle too, and that sector will also be visited by the president. Igbetokun, I feel like lion ready to devour criminals. And those are all the stories that we have on the front page of This Day.
Moving on from the front page of This Day, let's go now to the Nation newspaper. Look, Okay, looking at the Nation this morning, the big story there says Tinubu appoints service chiefs, CDS, NSA, IG, CGC. Daily Sun. Daily Sun, the big story there says PDP's reconciliation talks suffer setback. The writer there gives us some Atiku, Governors Wike, others absent from the event. Okay, we also see here on the front page, Imo PDP accuses defected SWC members of mismanaging 1.4 billion naira campaign funds. Anyanwu Okorocha reportedly in unholy deal. Okay, we also see here we all contributed to the outcome of the 2023 poll, says party stakeholders in People's Democratic Party. I feel like Tiger ready to chase away all criminals. AGIGP Cardinal Onayekan hails change of service chiefs. Ask Tinubu to change security structure. Page 26 is where you can find that story. We also see here details committed to defense of democracy, press freedom, NGE. Page 6. RMAFC wants 36 state assembly to amend relevant laws. Page 6. EFCC grills releases autumn after 10 hours over alleged misappropriation of funds. Emefiele knows fate July 13. Okay, Emefiele will know his fate on July 13. Enugu Guba tribunal dismisses Naji's petition against Mba Edeoga. INEC. I think that is even something that is worthy of reviewing in the process. All parties concerned can't keep saying they didn't get documents from INEC, so INEC still needs to be probed with regards to that. It just unsettles the whole structure. Okay, last story here says Naeti praises Tinubu's determination to end subsidy regime. That story can be found on page 2, and that's all we have on the front page of Daily Sun.
Okay, I think those are just all of the papers, but you have Vanguard?
Yeah.
Okay,
so
Vanguard.
let's take Vanguard this morning. Big story: anxiety as ex-depot petrol price rises to 490 naira per liter. Retail price rises to 515 naira. Major marketers lift at 446.57 naira per liter. Regulator unavailable at filling stations. PMS now for the reach. Sorry situation, says NLC. Deregulation drives change in price. Ipman, we are still far from deregulation, says Professor Iledare. Value of FGN bonds down by 93.2% to 183 billion naira. Page 19 is where you can find details. Confab, we are committed to press freedom, defense of democracy, says editors. NGE, NDLEA General Ogunwe retired. Porter Novelli congratulated Ezeanaba. We also see here EFCC releases ex-governor Otham after 10 hours grilling. 6,221 Nigerian doctors lost to UK in 6 years, says International College of Surgeons. Presidential poll: Tinubu opens defense June 30. Atiku Obi close cases on Friday. Okay, Aminike Findale front runners to replace Presiro. Page 39 in sports, and that's all we have on the front page of the Vanguard. The election tribunal is about to see an official close. What are the expectations of Nigerians?
I think that's basically about the PDP and not exactly for Labour Party as well. But again, a lot of expectations will be arising from that, from Nigerians. And in recent times, we've also seen the streets of Twitter go agog with some of the issues, being raised in the presidential election petition tribunal. Now, we've had, papers carry the fact that there's been a lot of squabbles between the Labour Party officials, lawyers, and that of INEC as well. There's also been allegations about INEC not wanting to bring out particular documents, saying that these documents can't be found and all of that. So it puts us in a very precarious situation at the moment. It also indicts INEC further, you know, into all of the things that happened during the February 25 presidential elections. And I think at this moment, I saw he's more like the person leading this presidential election tribunal. So a lot of confidence is being reposed on him by Nigerians, and they're asking him to do Nigerians good by, you know, giving a verdict that everybody will believe in at this moment.
A lot of questions, because this also still makes us question the Nigerian judicial system.
Exactly.
You cannot see that, because when you see PDP or Labour Party continue to have put forth this argument, that's more like someone obstructing the cause of the law. How are investigations done if the parties are not collaborating as should? And then to imagine that particular you know, case is going to be swept under the carpet, the fact that to a very large extent INEC is not collaborating, then you just wonder, are we going to be seeing a holistic you know, judgment out of this tribunal? But those are some of the issues, you know, that we have seen on the front page. Of course, there's still the conversation around the activity of the Naira since we heard that it was floated. It's back and forth, but a troubling one here are the new details with regards to fuel prices, and we are seeing different prices for lifting, different prices for points of, you know, sale and all of that. And
quite a sad story, petrol being for the rich. When I heard that headline, in my head I'm like, okay, so what would the poor be doing? Is it that we'll be trekking, or there's going to be another source
somewhere
of
somehow fire our movement by
charcoal or something, you know? But it's really a serious issue, and the way that is captured, it just shows that, look, prices of petrol is hiking by the day, making life more would I say miserable, more difficult, you know, for the common Nigerians. So it's more like, okay, it's a thing of the rich now. It's only the rich people that can afford this and, you know, still continue with life. But it's biting for us as you know, common Nigerians. But what is the federal government doing about it? There's been talks of, okay, let's see how we can, you know, subsidize transportation. Let's see how we can bring mass transit buses to also help, you know, Nigerians and civil servants in particular. Let's see how we can also increase, you know, salary allowances or the minimum wage to 150,000 naira and all of that. But just like we have always said, now while we are looking at ways that we can use and bring forward to ameliorate the sufferings of Nigerians, let it not just be talk all the time. Let us begin to see tangibles. Let us begin to see movements being made towards bringing these issues, you know, bringing this succor now to Nigerians. And that's where Nigerians are thinking that the president got it all wrong. Putting the cart before the horse does not make sense. We would have done all these palliative measures, put them in place first before we even begin to make announcements of fuel subsidy removal, so that we know that, okay, if we are going to bring mass transit buses to help cushion transportation you know, movement, let us also see that these mass transit buses have been pushed into the roads, subsidized monies for it as well. And people, you know, if we are saying that, okay, so it is a minimum wage that we are looking forward to, let us increase the minimum wage before we even start saying let us reduce or let us take out fuel subsidy. But again, I know that there are people that would say that even if all of these palliative measures were put in place, Nigerians will still kick against the issue of the fuel subsidy removal.
Well, since we have more people applauding that the fuel subsidy should be removed, I think it is the right move. We're just looking for how, you know, we can be stable as a country at this time. But then one of the biggest stories that we have on the front pages of our national dailies this morning is the matter of the federal government voting 24 billion naira for the 10th National Assembly members' accommodation. 24 billion naira of taxpayers' money, revenue generated in this country, is going to be voted for housing allowance for members of the 10th Assembly. Now we're talking the green chambers and the red chambers. am I paying your house rent after I am paying you salaries for doing the job?
Well, these are political offices, and so far it's a political office. There are allowances that are accruable to that office. But it will take us back to even the conversations that we had with Jide Ojo some time ago, where he talked about the fact that governance in Nigeria is quite wasteful. When we even look at the monies that have been, budgeted for welfare for Aso Rock, it's to say that, look, if you don't eat in your house, then forget it. You don't have to go to Aso Rock and take your hungry stomach to Aso Rock because of the kinds of money. So you see that there's a lot of waste going on, right? And now 24 billion naira, that is in 4 years. When you begin to break down, it's about 5 point something million for each senator.
5.87 billion naira.
And all of that. So I think that the Punch newspaper has also been able to break down in terms of utilities, in terms of personal assistance. There are also other things that comprises this assembly. Is not too much of the money to be given out like that.
It's too much of money to be given out because we need to reevaluate how we're spending money in this country. That is part of the reasons why we have people get to these assemblies and not want to retire. People doing 20 years. Calculate one person earning all of this amount of money times 20 years of their being there. It's a lot of money one person has amassed, but yet there are people in this country that will never count $1 million naira till they die.
It's not even about counting $1 million naira now. The point is, when you look at all of these monies that go into the pockets of our politicians, you even look at the road to their houses in the village, it is untarred. And then you're asking, what do they actually sit in the green chambers and the red chambers and do?
You're earning this much as statutory salaries and benefits, yet salaries. You are still stealing from the purse of national
and some
treasury.
monies that are even budgeted for constituency projects are being diverted. Monies that are supposed to be used for the betterment of the totality, the generality of Nigerians are being diverted. And then you see that this is meanness. When you even talk about systemic failure, these are the things that we call systemic failures. It's really a pity. It's really, really a pity. But then again, they would say that, it's, political offices are tenured. And so when I finish my tenure, I go. But do they go?
But do they go? We've had people that have done 20 years. The likes of Femi Gbajabiamila did 20 years
of course,
in the house. Before,
how many years has Ahmed Lawan done?
Before retiring, and you're looking at all these kinds of money, and the benefits are paid in different percentage as to, for instance, you have how many percent now? 200% of basic salary is what covers the accommodation. You now have 75% of a senator's basic salary being put aside for utilities, and you just keep on doing different percentage. We do hope that at some time in this country we have a set of leaders that come and review how much they earn from the country. We are not saying don't earn salaries, don't earn benefits, but this is at the expense of the economy and the expense of other Nigerians. If we cut 25 whooping billion naira in 4 years, if we were to take that and invest in the smallest sector, say even support MSMEs to grow and give people loans and grants to be able to do business, our country will thrive. With this kind of system in place, we are having the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, and that's why it now becomes a life ambition. A me local, it must get to my turn where I must become a political office holder, because sometimes these kinds of benefits is all someone is considering.
Yeah, definitely. It's really a pity. We must come to the point in this country where we make politics even less attractive and other sectors more attractive, so that people will begin to shift their gaze. And then when you know that you're coming into a political office, it is rather to serve than for your selfish gains. But at this point, we'll take a breather, and when we come back, of course, Monday was International Day to celebrate those that have the burden of sickle cell anemia. When we come back from this particular break, we'll be joined by our guest this morning. Let's look at the burden of sickle cell, themselves warriors. Let's look at how life has been with this set of people that call themselves warriors. We'll be right back after the short break. Just stay with us.
Spectrum TV, broadening your horizon. broadening your horizon.
All right, many thanks for still being there. I told you while on that break that when we come back, we'll be looking at the burden of sickle cell anemia. And just to remind you that Monday, which was the 19th of June, every year is being celebrated as World Sickle Cell Day. Of course, this is to bring to the public and the generality of Nigerians now the burden about this particular disease, how we can care for people that are living or warriors, and of course what we can do to not be in that situation where we say that we come under the burden of sickle cell anemia. Joining us this morning is Dr. Jumbo Hezekiah. He is of the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital, of course, of the Department of Hematology. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. And then we also have the very beautiful, she's looking so gorgeous this morning, Treasurer Asuko Etiemana. She is acting Chief Nurse Officer. Did I get that? Assistant Chief Nursing Officer of the University of Uyo Teaching Hospital. Now, she is a warrior and a survivor. Thank you so much for being on set with us this morning. We should rather start from the basics. Now, we are celebrating this day as an international day, which means that it calls for a lot of concern, and that's why, of course, we see that a particular date has been provided for us to bring forth awareness. But for me, I feel that not just for me, for the media, it's not just about celebrating on the International Day. It's about the constant talking about these issues and bringing it to the fore for everybody to understand, you know. So let's start from the basics now. What is sickle cell anemia? I should start with Dr. Hezekiah. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Sickle cell anemia is a genetic disorder of involving the beta hemoglobin, and is characterized by
beta hemoglobin.
Yes.
So is there a sweet one?
Okay, not as in beta or sweet.
Okay.
It's as in alpha or beta.
Okay.
Yes, there's an alpha hemoglobin, there's a beta hemoglobin, and what that simply connotes is that it results in a chronic hemolytic state, in that the red blood cells don't live up to the usual lifespan of 120 days. So, and while theirs live up to between 2 weeks and 80 days. So it becomes a problem, and so it results in several complications, and them being in and out of the hospital because of this anemia, which is the reduction in the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. So
is there a way that now with sickle cell anemia, is it like when we say non-treatable diseases or disease that can be treated, what bracket does that fall in? You know, like when someone has malaria, if I take the right medication, I'll be done with that. But what's the lifespan of treating sickle cell anemia? Let me talk to you, Nurse Treasure.
Okay, actually sickle cell disease is not a death sentence. It's a manageable condition. Giving an enabling environment, the person concerned, the patient, can live to any age. In fact, presently I have somebody 98 years here in Nigeria.
Wow.
Yes. He's an academic professor.
That's the oldest living
the oldest
warrior.
Yes, here in Nigeria.
Okay.
So they can, giving enabling environment, they can survive. You factor in other things, taking your medication, keeping your appointment, eating well, resting well.
And taking medication is lifelong, so you're on medication
for
the rest of your life.
Like my doctor rightly says, because of the inability of the red cell to carry oxygen, enough oxygen, of course the cells don't even survive that long. It's just a matter of 20 days, they die off and the new ones come up. So that's why you have most of them coming down with anemia, and that's low blood, and then they have issues. So in managing them, it entails a whole lot of things. You consider their mental state, you consider the environment, how they rest well, and all that. In fact, most of them presently are living in depression, and you see them contemplating suicide because of how it is. So that's why we are here today, just to create awareness that look, this disease might be invisible, but the burden is weighty.
Yeah, really weighty. Now, before we even go into talking about the burden now, let's come back to Dr. Hezekiah. Causative factors. Because I know that a lot of people will say, because of love, I decided to go into a relationship. But let's look at the major causative factors, why we are even having this conversation in the first place.
Okay, the causative factors are one, lack of awareness, and also lack of proper testing kits. And also people, perhaps, especially in this our climate, maybe jumping processes. When I say jumping processes, I mean like you want to take a job, you're asked to go do your medical examination.
Yeah.
Now, if you had gone to do that medical examination, you would have been tested. And amongst the routine tests, your hemoglobin genotype is usually part. So, but people sometimes jump the gun and not do the test, rather just meet someone to scribble down something without checking themselves. And when it's also a criteria for admission into schools, and you find out that if you have done all these tests, you would have known that, oh, I am AS, I am AA, I am this, or I am SS, and I am that. So at that point, if you are D, then the person must just be AA. So if I am S, if I have any S, if I have any C, or whatsoever in my hemoglobin that is not just all A, then I must marry somebody that is all A. Then the next thing is this deception, because I've heard people say, you know, sometimes you have cases of, will I say, lust or infatuation.
No, it's love.
There is no amount of love for someone that would make you cause your progeny to suffer. In fact, when you see your child go through the stress of what you willingly, it's a different thing when you're ignorant.
Okay.
But when you willingly consent to having a child with sickle cell anemia, or maybe you just base it on God won't allow. You can't be. Times some people would know their genotype and they would tell their spouse, oh, I am AS, and the person I'm supposed to get married to is AA. What is your genotype? And because they are so, like you said, in love, let me not say lust or infatuation, you know, the person would
so compatibility now, very quickly, compatibility. If I am AS, must it be with an AA, or so an AS?
But there's another one you just mentioned. I heard you talking about AC, and AC should also go for AA.
Yes.
That's a type of that blood.
Yes.
Break that down, because I know another thing with this is incomplete information.
Yes.
So we know about AA, we know about AS, but sometimes we do not know about
the AC. We have the SC and the likes. We have the X beta thalassemia.
Are these rare combination of genotypes?
Rare combinations, but the worst of all these combinations is the SS.
Okay.
You get that would really, you see people with SC. We've seen popular celebrities come out to tell you, oh, I am SC, like
Lekon, yes.
like Lekon. And you see them, they do well, they don't come down easily.
Okay.
And even amongst the SS, we have what we call the sickle cell haplotypes. Now, these impinge on the severity of the disease. because the Benin and the Bengal, those ones are more severe, unlike the ones we call the Senegal and the rest.
So that means that there are, you know, types of sickle cell that, because when Nurse Treasure was telling me the other day that she is a survivor, I was like, no, like she's a warrior. I'm like, no, you don't look it. And there are people you see, you don't believe even when they tell you. So it means that there are different types of sickle cell, and it
to shock you that we've diagnosed a patient at 70.
So how did the person survive till that time without knowing? Because one of the myths that we have surrounding sickle cell anemia is, I don't know, that sickle cell anemic people cannot survive beyond 25.
But once you go beyond 25, that means it's all over.
Once you're 25, you will never be sick again of sickle cell.
We heard that a lot.
You know, just once to struggle around that age thing. But then again, differentiate for us. When someone is called a warrior and when someone is referred to as a survivor, what's that about?
Well, we call them warriors because they've been through so much pain, not just the mental pain. And I've seen families that break up, marriages that break up as a result of this. Like you said, when they get to 25, it's a total myth. Me, I'm over 4 decades and all that, but above all that, it got a lot to do with the environment, the mindset, the people around, and all that. The child can survive, conveniently survive to any age of their choice. Why we lose them young is because at that tender age, they don't understand their body system. They don't know where to cross the line. They don't know what exactly to do for themselves. I'm saying this. I started living very young, in fact, in my primary 1 with somebody, and I spent some 27 years under somebody's care. But it wasn't funny, you know, when you are not with your own parents, you know what that means. But I had to go through all that. In my primary education, I did most of my exams on hospital bed. It was that bad. According to what my mom told me, it was when I was 3 months old, I was always falling sick. And then one of those days she went to the hospital and the nurse just told her, I said, Madam, we have to check the genotype of this child. So it was there and then, it was glaring. The result came out SS. And my mom was like, wow, what happened? From there, she had to do her own because she didn't even know. And my dad equally, they run east and they came down with AS. So these children can live to any age. That's why we are here. If parents could make it an intentional thing, because in the hospital I've seen some, they'll just walk in and the parents will tell you, I'm tired. If this child can just die, let the child just go. I'm tired.
And then sometimes the child will be hearing that, adding to the mental.
You know what is on their mind? This is my parents' fault. They feel that actually the mistake the parents made. Some feel there were some accidental discharge that just happened, or there's some bomb blast. That's what they are made to believe. But the stigma is so high. It's so alarming. They feel that some bomb blast going somewhere to happen, whereas it's not. These are unique individuals. They never created themselves. In as much as the parents must have made the mistake, they are not the mistake themselves. So we are here to tell our people that, look, the burden is high. The scourge is real. Please help us break the chain by checking your genotype.
It's very necessary. But let's look at the health burden now. When you say that someone has sickle cell, what does it entail? What are the things that the person is facing or will be facing? You know, so it looks as if sickle cell is just one sickness like that or one disease like that. But I know that sometimes they come down with crisis that has to do with body aches and, you know, different things. So just break it down for us to be able to understand, so that it's good, so we get to appreciate what these people are going through and why they choose to call themselves warriors as well.
Okay. If I would, let me dive a bit into like the pathophysiology. Oxygen is carried by the red blood cells, and these red blood cells are like what we call discoid in shape, like a disc, and it remains like that throughout circulation. Now, so when it takes oxygen from the lungs down to other parts of the body, let's say the toe, then you find out that as it's going down to the toe, it still maintains its shape. But this sickle cell red blood cell, when it's getting down to the toe and it's losing its oxygen and giving off oxygen to the tissues, the shape changes. It becomes crescent, just like the crescent moon. Now, some of them, when they now get into a high oxygen tension area, they can recover their shape. So, but this continuous change in shape, cause the red cells to be damaged. And some, they now become irreversible. They are tired of changing shape, and they now remain like that. Now, the flow becomes difficult. The function of carrying oxygen also now is also not there. So you then find out that they will be removed from the spleen, and all this process damages the cell. And once they become destroyed, iron is being let out into the body, and iron is a free radical, and that can damage tissues. Now, all of this put together will cause all the what we call sterile inflammation, the bone pain crisis. There are some with sequestration crises.
What's sequestration? Doctor, break it down.
Yeah, okay.
That's
the sequestration crisis is like, now this patient has the blood levels are maybe, let me say, within normal range, but they are all trapped in the spleen. So the blood is not in circulation. So you now see the spleen being enlarged, but the person is anemic, and that spleen is engorged with blood. So these are some of the complications. Then you then find out that because of all of these, the constant production of blood, you find out that every part of the bone is now being recruited to producing blood. So you then have what we call the frontal buzzing, the heads being somehow bigger, you get. Then we have what is called anatopathy, that's the upper jaw protruding. Then we can have of like extended butte, the hands and the legs become longer with shorter abdomen. So they have this physique that is maybe characteristic, and people would say, this person
readily, you just know.
So for babies, they have hand and foot syndrome. The hand and foot syndrome is a process where blood is trapped in the hand and cannot return. The hands become swollen and painful. So these are some of the things that are picked up in childhood that would make
but are they also vulnerable to other diseases? Like some of them would come down easily with malaria or other, you know, illnesses. Are they vulnerable to that?
And let's even talk about that in, like, not just having like malaria, like other terminal illnesses. Like for instance, someone is already sickle cell anemic, then you're having, for instance, let's say that same child was born with HIV. How do you manage all of that?
It's add to the burden. Then you now find out that normally, even in patients or children that don't have sickle cell, on the under 5, it's like a critical age where you need to take care of the children such that we don't lose them. So you now find out that coupled with this sickle cell condition, their mortality rates now increases. So the mortality rate here is really high
because of poverty.
Yes, because of poverty. Then the healthcare system is not there. Now the sickle cell can, like the hemoglobin electrophoresis are not there in the primary healthcare center that is closest to the villagers or the people in the room. And you find out that everybody now comes to, like, let me talk about that, everybody comes to the teaching hospital or comes to the general hospital and just to know if a child has sickle cell. So whereas it's not supposed to be. This system
cannot quite carry, you know, the burden of the numbers. Let's talk about managing sickle cell anemia in terms of like treatment. You know, there are some illnesses that say you can't eat this kind of food, eat this kind of food so that you can live longer. And then when we hear of the progressional treatment, marrow transplant, at that point, is it that once the person has had a bone marrow transplant, they are said to now be free of sickle cell anemia? Not Treasure.
Thank you. Talking about how to manage not just eating well, balanced and adequate diet. So it means the parents must be very concerned about them. That is from their standpoint of knowledge.
Does the condition select food type?
Not really. Okay. Not really. Like me, I do a lot of fruits. I'm not really the carbohydrate type. I do a lot of fruits. I eat more of soup and vegetables and all that. So it's just for you to know. That's why I tell my warriors, I say, just know what works well for you. They might have allergy to certain things, but understand how your body system works and know what works well for you. Know when to draw the line. For instance, now it's cold, the weather is cold, and then you want to go out there for TM, you want to go for events because your friends are there. I tell them, I say, look, you don't necessarily have to impress anybody. It's about you first. You love yourself. It is called first self-love. You love yourself. You know when to go out and when not to go out, when to present yourself. What happens if you attend the event and as you are alighting from the vehicle, the crisis comes because of sitting down for a longer time, assuming a particular position? To most people, they can't stand that. You know, you are not very good in heights, going heights, flying, taking flights and all that. Most people can't stand that. And of course, they have to prepare yourself. Know what works well for you. So talking about nutrition again is very, very important. A child that does not eat well, rest well, will definitely come down with, like we're talking about anemia, sickle cell anemia. They easily come down with fatigue, weakness and all that. So the child immunity. Then the mental state too should not be overlooked. You see most of them being depressed. This feeling of guilt. Why am I even born? Why was I born? Feeling
at this point, they feel they want all the love that they can
need
get
all the
from
love they
family
can
members,
gather.
from friends and
they
all
need
of that.
all the love, all the support. Some of them are being stigmatized even in workplaces. For instance, they can plan to go to work, and that morning they wake up, pain comes. Now it's very cold. Extreme temperatures is not ideal for them. That is extreme heat and extreme cold. It's not ideal for them. So they can wake up in the morning preparing for work, the pain comes. And you call your boss, please, ma, I'm sorry I can't make it today. They're like, this is your sickness. Every time you're always giving excuse. No, that's a stigma. And each time a warrior gets to hear that, it demoralizes them. They feel, oh, our people don't understand. They might feel we are pretending or we are being lazy. You understand? So that kind of thing should be avoided. That's why we are here. I'm here to advocate, not just for myself. I need others to understand.
About 3 minutes for us to wrap up this conversation. But very importantly now, I know there's been so many pushes and drive, you know, for governments to, you know, come on board in terms of policies to help those living under this burden of sickle cell anemia. I have friends that are warriors as well. They tell you that even the littlest thing like folic acid, that is more like, you know, a routine for them. They do not even have monies to buy it. So very quickly now, let's look at some of the policies that government can bring on board to help, you know, relieve warriors of this burden.
Okay, there are special clinics for them. Like we have the sickle cell clinic. If government can fund those clinics and provide them with these routine medications, just like it's done in Delta State. They have a policy, government policy to protect them and also to give them jobs and also to make sure that the jobs are suitable with their conditions and also to give strict rules, especially to schools, not to
admit without
once a child has a sickle cell, then you should see that child as a special student and you should tailor your training in line with the patient or with the child's health condition. There are schools that once you miss exam, you've missed the exam. And they don't bend for anybody. It should not be like that.
These kinds of considerations
should be made so that the child does not maybe lose his or her life trying to get a degree because of the stress in the school. And then when you were talking earlier, you talked about the bone marrow transplant.
Yes.
Now, for bone marrow transplant, the transplant helps the body to start producing A, that's the A hemoglobin, and so the patient's phenotype, hemoglobin phenotype, becomes AS, whereas the patient is still SS genetically. So it still means that the person that has had bone marrow transplant should not marry somebody that is AS. Otherwise, the patient will produce an SS.
But at that point, is the person's health more stable?
It's
after
better. Yes, but better. In fact, if not that we don't have time, you find out that it's an evolutionary trend to help people living in the malaria belt to survive malaria. That's why you find out that people with AS don't come down easily with malaria. So
I think that's even a different conversation on its own, because we've had situations where they say, oh, those that have AA are those that are prone to malaria. I am AA. I don't come down with malaria easily. I can fall sick maybe once in a year or twice in a year and all of that. So it's a conversation that we might just have to delve in much later. But because of time, this is just where we have to draw the curtains. But even talking about the bone marrow transplant, how many Nigerians are able to afford bone marrow transplant? So it still brings us back to the burden of this particular health that is asking for government interventions as well.
I think a strong take home from this morning's session will be the fact that for instance, new governments have come on board. I will be stretching out to the likes of Governor Umoino of Akwa Ibom State and other state governments. I like the aspect of sickle cell special clinics where you know that if this child or this person has this condition, let's go there. So let's see how we can push these kinds of conversations from our primary healthcare boards to health ministries and the likes. I think it will really help if we can establish that as a matter of urgency.
And also as a matter of policy, that all newborns should be screened for sickle cell.
Wow.
So if we have that policy in the state, that any child that is born is screened for sickle cell, that way you'll find out that the child comes up knowing that I am AS.
I know everyone knows how to handle the child from the get-go.
Yes, from the get-go, the child knows I'm not to marry anybody that is AA. We reduce it from that level.
All right, a very big thank you to you both for coming on the show this morning. Dr. Jumbo Hezekiah, Department of Hematology, UUTH, University of Uyo Teaching Hospital, and Nurse Treasure ATM, and who herself is a warrior and a survivor, Assistant Chief Nursing Officer, UUTH. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wealth of knowledge.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely. This is all we can take today, but it's important that you read up, have an information, share with the next person what you've learned about sickle cell. You can do that by following us across all social media platforms. Share the feed from today's session. My name is Uyai Aneka. We'll definitely do this again tomorrow.
Of course, yes, we will definitely come back here again tomorrow. But remember that sickle cell warriors are humans just like you and I. So let us stop the stigmatization and also give a helping hand. My name is Janice Cobham. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.